I'm about to say something I'm going to regret in a few weeks' time, but I think we might actually have a championship battle this year. It isn't going to be the three-team battle we all hoped for before the season started. It might be even better than that. Will Checo's outstanding weekend in Azerbaijan be enough to make him a contender to Max's throne? What can he do to sustain the challenge all season? Am I just grasping at straws in my thirst for a title battle? By the end of the video, you'll know the answers to all those questions and many more, so don't go anywhere. Sergio Perez breathed fresh life into this season's World Championship by beating Max Verstappen to victory in Sunday's Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Perez took advantage of an early safety car to stop for new tyres and leapfrog Verstappen in the other Red Bull. The Mexican controlled the remainder of the race to take the checkered flag 2.1 seconds clear of Verstappen. Charles Leclerc, who started on pole position, finished third for Ferrari, with Aston Martin's Fernando Alonso fourth. Carlos Sainz took fifth place and Lewis Hamilton finished sixth, 2 places ahead of Mercedes teammate George Russell. Perez's win moves him to within 6 points of Verstappen in the drivers' standings. Leclerc started from the front, but despite executing a perfect getaway to beat Verstappen to the opening corner, his lead lasted just 3 laps. With a drag reduction system open in the back of Verstappen's Red Bull, the Dutchman blasted past his Ferrari rival at 215 miles an hour on the main straight to take the lead. Perez, third on the grid, followed his Red Bull teammate through 2 laps later, with the double world champion leading a 1-2 for the grid's all-conquering team. It was a vital pass for Perez, who couldn't waste any time behind Charles Leclerc's Ferrari. The time he would have lost waiting to make a move on the Monegasque could have been the difference between a race win and second place. From the front, Verstappen would have expected to claim his third win of the season, but the race fell away from him on lap 10 when Nick de Vries crashed out at the 4th corner. Verstappen immediately pulled in for new tyres, but just moments later the safety car was deployed, with de Vries' broken AlphaTauri needing to be cleared. With the field running at a controlled speed, Perez was able to stop for rubber and retain the lead. Verstappen fell from 3rd to 1st, with Leclerc also benefiting from a free pit stop. An earlier change of tyres also cost Hamilton. The British driver dropped from 5th to 10th once the order had shuffled out. When the safety car came in, Verstappen wasted no time in moving up to 2nd after he dived underneath Leclerc's Ferrari at turn 3. Verstappen failed to make any headway on his teammate after that though, and despite a brush with the barriers at turn 15, Perez followed up his sprint triumph on Saturday with his second win of the campaign. Checo actually hit the wall twice during the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, but he joked that it helped with the RB19's front end. Perez's second hit of the day came at turn 15, a hefty whack that had his race engineer Hugh Bird asking, "What happened at turn 15? I clipped the wall on entry," he replied. Speaking to the media after his win, his second of the weekend with Perez P1 in the Saturday sprint, the driver joked that it helped his RB19's balance. "It actually helped me," he said with a smile. "I was struggling with the front end, so somehow I picked up a bit more of front end. But no," he continued. "In all honesty, I was quite concerned, because the paranoia starts and you start to look at the tyre. And I was looking at the tyre and my engineer asked me what happened on 15, and I'm like, wait, I'm just looking that everything is okay with the tyre." "I counted and Max hit the wall 4 times, said team boss Christian Horner. "Checo at least twice. So they pushed. We raced them to the finish and they pushed each other hard." That is the takeaway from the two's multiple trips into the walls. They were pushing with everything they had, which makes Checo's win all the more impressive. He is known as a street circuit specialist, but that doesn't make a huge amount of sense to me, because so many of the street circuits have very different characteristics. You can't compare the low-speed sharp corners of Monaco to the massive straights and heavy braking zones of Baku, for example. Nonetheless, something about the tight walls of the inner-city races brings out the best of the Mexican, who is now the only driver to win the Azerbaijan Grand Prix more than once. This wasn't a win in the same style as Saudi Arabia, where the 2 Red Bull drivers bickered on the radio with their engineers about target lap times and who was allowed to win the race. Checo decided he was going to keep a 2-second gap between himself and Max, and that's what happened. Max had plenty of time to try and take time out of his teammate and get into DRS range, but simply couldn't. It was a perfectly managed race by Sergio, who showed the kind of class you would expect from a potential world champion. Sergio Perez's accomplished victory in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix has confirmed, in his mind at least, that he is a genuine rival to his Red Bull teammate Max Verstappen for the World Championship this year. Not everyone is as convinced as the Mexican, not even his team principal, judging by Christian Horner's comments afterwards. but Perez certainly laid down a marker around the streets of Baku. "It's a long year ahead," Perez said after shrugging off everything the two-time champion could throw at him and controlling the race around the streets of this city on the shores of the Caspian Sea. "We are in the fight." Perez's win, together with his victory in Saudi Arabia 2 races ago, makes the score 2-2 between the Red Bull drivers so far this season. If you want to count the sprint race as well, it's 3-2 Perez, but you probably shouldn't. The 6-point lead Verstappen has is down entirely to a difficult qualifying day for Perez at the previous race in Australia, where technical issues left him down the grid and required a comeback drive. It was not by chance that Perez mentioned several times over the weekend that he and the team needed to avoid weekends like that. There were no errors for Perez or his side of the garage this time, and he left Azerbaijan for the 15-hour flight to next weekend's race in Miami with 2 wins under his belt, one in Saturday's shorter sprint and another in the Grand Prix, to make it an almost perfect weekend. And while it is true to say Perez was gifted the lead by the timing of the safety car, that's not the same as saying he lucked into the win. Perez closed in on Verstappen once both were past the pole-winning Ferrari of Charles Leclerc and was putting him under pressure. Verstappen radioed that he was starting to run into tyre problems. By the end of lap 9, Perez was just 0.6 seconds behind and felt he was on the point of passing his teammate by using the DRS overtaking aid. At this point, Red Bull stepped in and stopped him getting the chance by calling Verstappen in for the new tyres next time around. The idea was to keep Verstappen in the lead, but it backfired. Red Bull had seen the AlphaTauri of Nick de Vries in the runoff area at turn 6 but miscalculated. They thought the incident was not enough to bring out the safety car, felt the Dutchman's car was undamaged and he would reverse back onto the track, so brought Verstappen in rather than waiting another lap for a safety car. They were wrong. What they had not seen was that de Vries had clouted the inside wall and broken his front suspension. He was not going anywhere. The safety car was deployed just after Verstappen's stop, giving Perez and Leclerc cheap stops and vaulting them back ahead of Verstappen. Horner described the safety car timing as unfortunate, but it is far from a given that Verstappen was going to win this race without it. The cards fell for Perez, who grabbed his luck and ran with it. And there were mixed messages from Verstappen and Red Bull afterwards. The radio message about tyre wear was clear, and Horner admitted that Verstappen was starting to struggle a little bit with the rear tyres. Yet Verstappen said afterwards that he could have been a little more aggressive with the way I was using my tyres. I was a bit careful. No Formula 1 driver is ever going to happily admit to being outdriven by their teammate, are they? Perez, meanwhile, felt the first stint rather than the safety car itself defined his race. "The first stint was very intense," he said, "just making sure I stayed in the DRS, and then once there pushing Max to make sure he used his tyres, and that was one of the keys. Once I was in Max's DRS, it made my race. It was time to overtake him, but he pitted and then we got the safety car, and I got a bit lucky there. Then, once we used the hard compound tyre, it was really hard to keep Max behind. I knew as soon as he got DRS, that's it really, and to keep him behind was a massive challenge. We were really pushing each other." So, can Checo keep his title challenge going, or am I just grasping at straws? Well, he certainly thinks he can. "Having 3 kids at home, I wouldn't be travelling around the world if I didn't believe that I can be a world champion, and I'm working towards that," Perez told Sky Sports TV. "There's so much you can talk outside the car. It's important to deliver on the track, and I think without the issues we had in qualifying in Melbourne, we should be leading the championship. So definitely there is everything to believe that we can do well this year. If he can keep up the pressure on Max and take a world championship, it would probably be one of the greatest performances by a second driver in the sport's history. I mean that with respect. Max is definitely Red Bull's #1 driver, and if Checo can beat him, it would be even more impressive than Rosberg's win over Hamilton in 2016. I probably am just clutching at straws, but for now, I'm going to enjoy the title battle we have." Do you think Sergio Perez can keep fighting Verstappen all season? Can he do a good enough job to win a world championship? Let us know in the comments down below. And until next time, drive safe and bye for now.